Hello everyone, welcome to 27. Today we're going to be comparing a Bugeye Subaru Impreza with my classic Impreza WRX. Now you probably all know JM from JM on Cars. He's kindly supplied this lovely Bugeye. I've got my lovely WRX, and together we're just going to compare the differences between the two. I also don't really know very much about Bugeyes, so I can't give you a lot of history on the various models, the differences like that. Quite frankly, I'm quite confused on the different models and variations. There were so many, even with the classic. So this is basically the first of the Bugeyes, so it's an 01, and that is a 1997 WRX import from Japan. But it will be interesting to see how they drive in comparison to each other. So we're going to take them out, go for a bit of a burn, and see how they go. Interesting car, the Bugeye. So you sit in it much lower than on my classic Impreza. It does feel like a more modern car. The interior in particular, although I don't think it's actually an improvement, I prefer the interior on my older classic to this. It feels more precise on the steering, but lighter with less feedback. I don't know how much of that is to do with the big wheel that is here. The wheel actually makes a big difference to how any car feels, and on mine that little Nardi is much smaller. Though strangely, it does feel like my classic has more front end grip than this. I never really, found that the front end was lacking at all on that one. On this you can just feel that it's sort of getting to the edge. One of the problems with these Imprezas is that there's just so much variation between the models. Not just the actual models produced by the manufacturer, certainly in terms of the classics anyway. I don't know how many differences there were within the Bugeyes, but also then in the differences and the mods that people have made to these. These seem to be some of the most modified cars around, except for maybe the earlier Nissan GTRs. So it's quite hard to tell when you're reviewing something what it really is that you're reviewing. This has got quite a few mods. This has got an uprated turbocharger and everything else needed to make that work and reliable. So it's pushing out about 330 brake, I think. Something along those lines anyway, a bit more than mine, which is standard and should be pushing out about 300 brake. I just spoke to James, and once again we're in disagreement. He thinks that this car feels a little bit quicker, and I think that mine feels a bit quicker. So I don't know. What we do know is that my car is about 200 kilos lighter, so there shouldn't be a lot in it because this has a bit more power. The other one's lighter, so you can see there isn't going to be a huge amount in it between the two. This Bugeye in particular, it's a more aggressive looking car, which is nice. I really like the lines of the original, the classic Impreza though. I think that they're just, there's something about them. This is cool as well, but I do prefer those, just in the same way as I prefer the interior. Well, there isn't much in it. I'm just following James now, but sometimes it feels like he's pulling away, but that could just be because he's in the right bit of the turbo boosty bit there and I'm not, so I don't know. There isn't much in it anyway. This Bugeye feels a lot more like I expected an Impreza to feel. It's a bit lighter on its feet, it's got a little bit more precision. Doesn't quite have the same character as that. The engine is pretty much the same, bar, again, he thinks it's a little bit slower on mine and vice versa, I do, but there isn't a huge amount in it anyway. The classic, my one feels much more like it's it's just going to step over anything and over continents. It feels a bit more like a really quick 4x4, whereas this is much more like a normal sports car. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. these flat fours, they're some of the best engines around. I can't believe I'd never experienced one before. They've got such a grumbling sort of character about them. They're just awesome, awesome engines. I mean, I love my Italian engines, and you know, the engine in the Integrale was a nice engine, but this is just, they've got so much character, and they just pull all the way through to the red line. It's for a turbocharged engine, they're really pretty special things. One thing which is definitely better on this than on mine is the gear change. I'm not sure if they have the same gearbox or not. I suspect they probably do, so maybe it's down to the linkage. I like the gear change on mine too, but on this it's just better damped, and I don't know what it is. On mine, it's got a little bit more of a sort of a fragile feel to it. It's hard to explain. It's a tiny bit more notchy. On this, it's another almost perfect gear change. The suspension is a smidge firmer on this, and it's a little bit more playful, I think. It doesn't seem to have the level of grip that that my car does, but you know, that could be down to tyres and all sorts. But it's a firmer, more precise chassis, and you're sitting lower, which helps. But just doesn't, for me, have the character and the charm that my earlier car does. Just cutting in for a quick aside here for a couple of reasons, really. First of all, because I've driven my car again, and it's given me a bit more of a clearer appreciation about the differences. And also secondly, because I've been talking with James about the issue on which we initially disagreed, which was the power issue. I think for me what that comes down to is that in actual fact his car has got a little bit more low down than this does. It seems to be that the turbo maybe spools up quicker, I don't know, but it definitely has more. But I think that this has more of a top end rush. That could be just because it's weaker at the bottom, so for that little rush at the top it sort of feels a little bit stronger, I don't know. And there isn't a huge amount in it in either sense. One of the biggest changes is the front end feels much more sort of completely sort of hunkered down on this, much more grip. But then again, he says he's got some crappy tyres on his, so that could be all that's down to. Certainly this is a much taller car. It feels less sporty in its outlook and the way it turns, much less precision, but quicker to turn in. It's quite an odd dynamic, but I love it. It feels really good. And now back to the Bugeye. You can't deny that even whether it's this car or the earlier ones, these Imprezas are just like amazing performance and value for the money. Just incredible. Thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and see you for the next one.